Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to Malta, an EU member state. And I'm very honored to have you with me. I'm a part-time Maltese. Here is my golden passport. You know about it in the headlines. We'll get to discuss that. I'm pleased to explain you a country that is worth visiting again and again, Ms. Delwan. It is a very tiny microstate, if you like. It's very small, but it doesn't really feel small because traffic jams and transport are challenging at times. It's pretty. It's loaded with art and history and a fantastic atmosphere. And if I'm really honest, I always thought Malta, no way, it's just a lot of British tourists drinking too much beer. What do I got to do there? There's nothing for me. That was a mistake. It is actually a cultural hotspot for the last 5 centuries. And you'll see that. And it's amazing architecture, lovely people, and a very well-to-do economy, I would say. In fact, it's one of the strongest economies at the moment in Europe. So I've prepared a lot of slides for you, which I'm happy to finally being able to share that with you. It is with great pleasure that AUS invites you to become a little bit Maltese yourself the next hour. I have had the pleasure to visit the place in a more professional way several times now over the last years, and I would be honored to shed a little light on what's behind that flag, and that you call yourself a part-time Maltese as well by the end of my lecture. Where we are, these are the islands, country code 356.mt, same as management team. Local time, same as here, also using the daylight saving time. And to fly there is 3 hours and 5 minutes, actually, which is not bad for almost 2,000 kilometers. At the moment, there is 14 flights per week. 12 flights are co-chaired by KLM and KM, Malta Airlines, and 2 by EasyJet. That's all from Schiphol Airport. When there's tourist months, there's also the direct flights from Eindhoven Airport, which are a lot cheaper, but you have to enjoy being treated like cattle on an airport. Where we are, this is where we are, and as you can see, it's relatively close to the coast of North Africa. It's just 300 kilometers to Libya and to Tunisia. There's also direct flights from Malta International Airport to Tunisia, I think even 2 a day. But there's also the boat to Sicily, because that's only 93 kilometers. And you have the slow ferry, but you also have the fast-paced James Bond style boats that do it really quickly. And for people in Malta, it's relatively easy to go there, and for Italians as well. As you can see, this is the most southern EU capital that we have. And here you see it, including the KM Malta boarding pass of yours truly. But it is, like I told you, it's an amazing place when you see it and you look at the pictures at Google Images. You're like, wow, this is much more than I expected. And it took me too long to realize that the treasures that it has and the richness of the historical richness of the place. This is direct flights. As you can see, there's a lot from the UK. That also has historical reasons, but also the Brits like to go to places where there is more sunny days, and I assure you that Malta has plenty. In fact, during daytime, it can be really hot at times. This is a picture of Flight Radar 24, which is a bit awkward, but it's a helicopter of AFM, the Armed Forces of Malta, which is responsible for drawing this on the flight radar map. Yeah, what can I say? Malta is an intriguing phenomenon. It is a city-state in terms of its size. It's really small, but it actually doesn't feel like that when you're there. Because when you travel a bit, there's highways, there is boat ferries to the other islands, there is enormous coast everywhere, and so there is, enough to do on the island. There's not a lot of nature, I would say. It's usually rocks, a bit dry, There is lovely beaches, but not all the time. But yeah, there's always this Mediterranean Sea. The wind can blow fairly strong, but yeah, it's usually also nice when it's so hot that you have a bit of a breeze. Malta. Now, the islands, there is also some micro islands, but basically we say there's two big ones and there's Comino in the middle. And you actually, by boat, you can, by the ferry, you can pass it, or you can have these, especially here in the north, you have the harbors where you have these small yachts that go into the Mediterranean. That is so much fun, and I can strongly recommend that. Um, it is also so close to North Africa that historically this is a place where everybody has been fighting and has been trying to occupy it. So this includes the Vikings, the Romans, Carthago. I don't know how to pronounce it in English. You can ask Chris. But the Turks, the Ottoman Empire, the Arabs have conquered it many times. But at a certain moment, particularly during the Crusades, we see that the nobility of Europe was a bit getting worried that more and more was occupied by the Ottomans and by other non-Christian peoples, and then they started to protect the holy city Jerusalem. Now, and out of that, in a way, Malta became a stronghold of those kind of the Knights of Malta. I'll explain that later. But because it was so often attacked, you see these fortifications everywhere. And as you can see by the size of the human beings walking there, and this is just Valletta, the capital. It is enormous, and it's really a place which is a fortress. You know, this fortified place, fighting everybody trying to. And this was in a way the borderline of this is where Christianity starts. In the past, that is what the popes wanted. As a result, the nobles, not the first sons that were supposed to be king, but the other princes they often went on these kind of missions. And so in the old center of Valletta, you have these beautiful buildings called hotels, but they are kind of, yeah, hospitals, and at the same time they were fortification palaces for the people, and it was by language. So you had the Castilian castle, which is the biggest. You had for the Bavarians, where they spoke the German, and so you see all kind of beautiful places. That's where the rich people would be as Knights of Malta. It was an honor for families to have so many sent there. So as a result, there was a lot of money actually. So if you're walking in the old city, wow, it's loaded with monuments. It's also interesting that high and low, because it's going down to the sea. So it's almost a bit like Maurits Esser. I don't know if you know this Dutch artist who has all these kind of staircases. Well, he has been to Malta, and maybe he drew some inspiration from the staircases. But this is a staircase. I've been myself to watch the fireworks, the big festivals next to this building, and there's all kind of movement. This is an elevator, but it's fantastic, you know. And that is what what else did I wanted to say? Yeah, it is a society where when you meet the Maltese and not the tourism, they're quite strongly saying, you know, everybody knows each other. Well, there is about 500,000 people on the island, but so that's not really practical. But in the circles of, you know, who knows who, they do actually. Everybody knows each other, and it's relatively easy. But you need to be in this tight-knit society, and if you have that entrance, the doors are open. And that I can say myself. Yeah, it's visually it's breathtaking. It's really special at places. As you can see, there's a lot of cruise ships. Yeah, I don't know if that helps. Environmentally speaking, no. This is the flag, and the flag I'm holding right now is the flag that since the independence has been more or less used. Although this red and white flag you see a lot also in old paintings and a lot of things. It's all the time there, as you can see also here. But this is the oldest flag, and it looks remarkably much like the one from Denmark. We'll get to talk about that later. Then this was French. Here you go. And then after that, the Brits took over. for a long time. And then at the end, they gave this kind of sign. Let me show you the. It's you know, the cross, but it's actually not very Maltese. It is a kind of identity crisis in a way, because this is the real Maltese cross, and that's what it should be. And even if we look at the Times of Malta, it's using that one from the flag, but that's very recent, and it was awarded by the then king. But yeah, so it's not very original, and there are people saying, yeah, like, why should it be like that? Because everything else has the Maltese cross. That's something that yeah, is under discussion at the moment still. This is the one we're referring to, and you see it everywhere. And it's kind of beautiful. It was also a strong symbol. They had the Knights of Malta had a very strong navy that was really feared in the Mediterranean. Let's talk about the Knights of Malta. That started in the 11th century, mainly as I told you, the noblemen, the princes that had an honorable work, and they were actually kind of helping with health, hospital brothers in a way, and they were supporting the pilgrims that got ill, but slowly they also realized that just be in care wasn't enough. They also needed to be commandos. So it evolved into a military religious order that also had hospitals, also in Malta, and they're protecting the Christians that wanted to visit as a pilgrimage the holy city. So that is what really happened. And they were kicked out of Jerusalem, and then first they went to Rhodos, and then finally in 1530, Charles V, he gave Malta to the knights, yeah, the military hospitaller order of St. John of Jerusalem. And then slowly that became the Knights of Malta, because that's where they were living. And that's what they got. So they got the island from the then king of Europe, if you like. And they were attacked by the Ottomans in 1565. And the Turks, they sent 40,000 troops on boats. And with only 7,000 Knights of Malta, they actually managed, and some local people. This 8-pointed cross is what you see on flags, on coins, on souvenirs, on Playmobil. This one is also a giant one. But anyway, the Knights of Malta, when Napoleon came, they lost their island, which was their country in a way. But it stayed a country. Funny enough, you didn't know that, did you? But the Knights of Malta, or in Dutch, the Maltese Ridderorde, they're actually a mini state, but they don't have a territory. So they issue their own passports. They have a UN observer status. And if you go to the website, you see all this signing of memorandums with foreign embassies, and they actually are allowed to use their Knights of Malta passports. And you see it in the Da Vinci Code, the Maltese Falcon. There's a lot of movies where you always see these Templars or the Knights of Malta. Actually, at the moment, they do more kind of, support for Ukraine or Gaza, where there's people in need. Then they have hospitals and they try to support. So that is what the Knights of Malta do. So there is a lot of that. And it's not so much like the Da Vinci Code, where they have secret armies. They probably have, but it is a country with no land. That is the Maltese Order of St. John of Jerusalem. Here we see them. I don't think they look like knights anymore. These fellows are too much in restaurant tables, and they don't look like they are going to hold swords. And if they do, they should be very, very careful. You see again that flag, and I will draw your attention to that. And of course, there's the statue of St. John, the Heilige Johannes in Dutch. And here we see the flag, and I told you, spot the difference. is it Denmark or is it not Denmark? Actually, that was the stupid, silly mistake I made when I was there. And my dear friend, Mr. Jesmond, he said, no, that's not the Danish flag. No, it's not. And as you saw earlier, that is the flag that has been used for centuries. And you see that the knightly flag has the cross centered in the middle, just like the English flag in a way, or the Union Jack. And the Danish flag is the tilted a little bit off center, like we see in all Scandinavian flags in Finland or Iceland or Faroe, and these all have that a little bit moved cross. But definitely, it's a Christian flag. There's no misunderstanding about that. This is the former capital, Mdina. It is such, you have to love historical cities, but I'm a freak for it. And this is the one city in the world where I probably, if I could get an apartment, I would definitely, it would be so worth it. It's so pretty there. This place has stolen my heart. And I think it's one of the prettiest places I've seen, with cute little alleys. There's no cars really allowed. This is what you see. It's breathtaking. It's hyper romantic, but super boring at night because it's loaded with tourists. And then the moment the buses go, it's just dead empty, and there's nothing really. There is just a tiny few restaurants for the luxury hotel that they have, but for the rest, it's a couple of tourist shops and some coffee. But that's it. There's really not a lot of activity. But the beauty is in the streets. It's loaded with stuff like this, and this is the typical Maltese sandstone that you will see. But it is so cute. At least I love it. It's up to you. This is a five-star hotel, which is breathtaking. It's an old castle, and then they serve, because it's always nice weather. So, well, almost always nice weather. So they serve the breakfast up on the balcony, and you're in a castle. You take the old stairs up to the balcony breakfast, and you see the island, and a little bit further you see the Mediterranean Sea. And this is one of my top 5 breakfasts of my life, and it's a bit on the pricey side, because I should say Malta is not a cheap island at all. Prices are comparable to Amsterdam, but it's only money. This was a very nice, dramatic place, I should say. Let's talk about what we really need to talk about: business skills and not tourism, Schroevers. Yes, I know. Insular people, and for centuries they had to deal with foreign domination again and again and again. And those in power in the small island were the knights of Malta, and these were noble people from all over Europe. And they were, with their swords and their money, they were telling people what to do. Before it was the Vikings, before it was the Romans, before it was Carthago, it is all these, the Phoenicians, the certain moment the Turks really tried again and again. Then Arabs in around 1057, they managed to conquer the island. So what we see is that families are very closely knit, community bonds are very strong. And that is also a kind of necessity if you're controlled by foreign powers. If the French came, the British came, and now it's almost, you could say, that the European Union took over that place. And there is, I have a lovely book about this kind of issue. It's the Decolonizing the Maltese Mind in Search of Identity. But it is a little bit an issue. It is something that, how can you take control if you have never had that? It is like colonial societies that really are struggling with, and we saw that also in the lessons of Curaçao, for instance, is that you really see that it has a strong impact on the mindset of people. Colonialism is a dirty monster, and we could say that whether you call it protectorate or not, that Malta had to deal with that. So in the behavior of people, we see that the word pazienza, which, of course, if you speak Italian or French or patience, even in English, is something we recognize, and live and let live is very important. There is a patient outlook in behavior. Decisions are made very carefully, almost making an Excel with pros and cons, which is healthy to do, I would say. I also see people that enjoy sharing ideas, debating. The oratory skills of the old Roman Empire are still very much enjoyed by the Maltese, and they're damn good at it. And they take the floor when they start talking. It's part of the show, and most of the people I meet have that quality. And they also know it because they eat aloud a lot with other people. There's very nice dining, by the way. And then there is also that atmosphere, which is enjoyable, honestly. I also see that there is a very thorough, careful weighing, also legally almost at times. Even with close friends, I sometimes feel like, oh, this is very formal, you know? Um, then as people in general, because everybody is unique, and I know that, but courteous, elegant, pleasant, uh, but they prefer implicit communication. That means subtle. It could be expressive, emotional, noisy, particularly when a glass of red wine has been savored, but they always try to give you a nice way out. And that really bumps with the typical Northern European or let's say even North American way of telling it as it is. This is not a good country for that. So you need to be able to decipher underlying messages, like in a way in most of the world, but if you're not used to that, that will be challenging and you actually miss the point, which they are trying to give you. We see that there is a lot of respect for elderly people, both in family and workplace. Bit conservative, I would say, but very friendly and nice and pleasant. But the deeper values are rather hierarchical, and also very much on a traditional level, and a very strong respect for the church. And the church has been very, very dominant there. It's also logical because this was the war zone between Islam and Christianity. So there was a very strong need to be hyper Christian from that perspective. There's no value judgment there. It's just the way it developed on the islands. Um, but we also see that the church had a very strong role in society. And particularly the British have given the church a lot of space and room. Whereas the French would have been much more for enlightenment and the sharing of the culture, that has been immediately, because it was in a way a risk for the church to lose their possibilities and their advantages they had in society. And the British probably used the church and also to keep the society a little bit calmer towards independence movement, for instance. Talking about time management, taking time, there's no need to be rushed, and relation and tradition always comes before strict punctuality. I've seen that it's okay in receptions and that sort of thing to arrive slightly later. There is no issue. There's no apologies necessary. Also, people are in their behavior very Latin, I would say. So you can think of South Europe and Latin America. It's very comparable. So multitasking, parallel conversations, interruptions, but in a very enjoyable way, honestly. However, there is, I feel, a very strong difference with southern Italy, because I think 300 years of British rule and British attentiveness to timekeeping, that left a mark on the Maltese time management. In that sense, it's much stricter than Italy. And there's also a kind of deep uh, impatience almost with the Italian way. There's almost a kind of anger about it. Even when you talk to CEOs or my colleagues, and then there's also one Italian colleague from Palermo, and you can see the immediate irritation because of the Italian. And yeah, so that surprised me at times. But yeah, they have a point about the timekeeping. I should say also, traffic can be really against you, and you make that mistake quickly. There's brand new roads. There is brilliant a bus system. This is the Talinja card. This is what you use as your card to swipe, and there's an amazing system with buses already. Before the Second World War, you see all these green and white buses. They're everywhere. They're really on time, but they are super slow because the roads are really like along the coast. So it's a beautiful ride, but you're going to take an hour and a half to do something which is not that far away. So you feel the island is endless and huge, but maybe the bus is really slow. So you need to, like for instance, when I'm going somewhere, my buddy picks me up really early at 7:30 because then we can just drive. But anywhere after that, the traffic jams last for hours, and you're really hours in that car. So that's why you think Malta is huge, but it's not. Um, Malteseness. Is there a Malteseness? Yeah, well, there is. And there is a very strong historical pride because it used to be a great island. There were a lot of, yeah, they managed to keep away all the invasions. Not always. The French and the Brits made it, but in general. Then there is the language, Malti. And Maltese and English, they're unifiers in the country. It's a very, 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 very strong Catholic heritage. But if you go to a mass, it's very cheerful. I went to a lovely one in Gozo, and there is the gentleman is on a guitar, and everybody's singing, and it was almost like a Jamaican party where I thought, wow, this is it's so enjoyable, I guess, to go to church. Nothing strict or difficult. It's just almost fun, I suppose. Then they have these festas, and it's very famous. And if you have the opportunity to see that, it's brilliant because they have these middle-age style of cloth hanging from the churches over the street, and this is probably what it looked like in the Middle Ages, and it's magnificent. It's all with gold and big red cloth hanging on the street, and then there's food, there's music, there's all these festas, and they move from place to place or even community in Valletta, and it's worth it to see, it's worth it to try. We see a very strong family orientation, community. Sometimes these communities can also, have rivalry between each other in music, in sports, in anything. And that is a bit surprising on such a small island, but it is as it is. There's a survival mentality. And I think part of that is also being Maltese. Um, the self-stereotype would be, well, we're very generous, family-oriented, helpful. But if you look at the Maltese Knights, which have that helping as their main task in society, I guess it is in a way like that. It's a very open society also towards immigration, for instance. There's tradition, at the same time there's the adaptability, but the adaptability also, like for instance, we see that also in Belgium, this incredible, ability to build consensus and bridges is also because you're occupied, and then you kind of need to. You can't push your own way. You have to deal with it, and that's again probably this interesting book by Surep on the decolonizing the Maltese mind, which is an issue for more countries on our globe. At CCBS and the cross-cultural courses, we always try to look at the value systems, and we have a couple now. As you can see, the spectrum is towards the right side, where, for instance, the Netherlands would be very much here, or US, France, Italy would be more here, but Malta is really quite on the right side. So we see strong hierarchical distance within Europe, one of the more traditional Roman Catholic pyramidal style, and you see that the people that have the power are also kind of like non-visible that much. But they do make judgments, a lot of times clever judgments, I should say. We'll get to look at the economic performance in a bit. Rules are strict, but there is always the back door in Malta. It's very group oriented, but then ideally the community, the family, the in crowd. If we look at the time management, I told you it's very flexible. Risk taking is something that is not very much done. And usually we say that the higher the score for risk taking, the better the economic performance. But Malta is an example where there is a kind of higher, a lower risk taking, but actually they're doing really well. Now, the second thing is a little bit more in the communicative skills. It's implicit, which I told you earlier, where people are very careful in the way they give you the message. It's in between of Italy and North Africa, and that is exactly what it is. It's very much a relationship culture, although they can be quick to the point and be business oriented. And 300 years of British rule have left their marks. So they are the working skills, the working ethos. I do feel comfortable there because it's okay, let's discuss and then it gets done. And there is quality assurance and it's a really modern, safe society, I would say. Confrontational, well, yes and no, because it's implicit, so it's subtle, but it's emotional. So it can be with, yeah, strong eye contact, lively discussion. Um, they like to join the conversation, and it is a bit like the Italian or, let's say, North African style in that way, but it's also really not. And it's yeah, it's at the same time it's Mediterranean. It's relaxed. They enjoy life, and you don't live to work. You work to live, and that's the style. And then you're 3 hours in the traffic jam. I want to talk with you about the language, and as you can see, linguistica is the spelling. So this sounds very Latin. And funny enough it is, but funny enough it isn't. Let's dive into language. Maltese is called Malti, and actually it is a Semitic language. That means like Arabic, Amharic, or Hebrew, which are the Semitic family in languages. And this is a unique mix because it uses the Latin script, like you see here above. Then it has certain Arabic sounds that it needs to fix that the alphabet of the Latin alphabet doesn't have. So it adds diacritics, which we'll show you in a minute. It has a lot of Roman or Latin or let's say more Italianized vocabulary, but the grammar is Arabic-like, or actually Phoenician Arabic. So it evolved from the Siculo-Arabic spoken mostly on Sicily and Malta. And for centuries, it's been influenced by Arab, Viking, Italian contexts. And it's only in the 20th century, so just before the Second World War, after the First World War, that the standardization began, that they had an Institute for the Language, and you know, they started to study it and institutionalize it. But that's a start of a language. And after a few generations, you start to have literature and songs and music. And Maltese definitely is a very strong linguistic entity. Here we have the alphabet. And as I told you, there are certain sounds that they need to make. So they have these, don't ask me to pronounce it, because my Maltese is limited to grazie, which sounds like grazie, but yeah, so it means thank you. So I'm not very good at it, but I do enjoy it. I enjoy listening to them, and when I'm sitting in the office, there is a mix. To me, it's like they have a bit of they have an accent. It's not like perfect English that you would hear, but hey, I speak Dunglish. But it's enjoyable. You start to get used to it. In Malta, and they have certain ways of. I'll try to mimic it in the future. Yes, we're gonna listen to Edion, who is singing in Maltese. Let's hear it for Maltese.
نهارس فانا يكون نسفنو مسخانة تصيفت ننتلفو تخص المومنت وقت لإيديك في ديا تارس ليا رتمو نهارس فانا يكون نسفنو مسخانة تصيفت ننتلفو تخص المومنت وقت لإيديك في ديا تارس ليا.
Thank you, Edion. Grazie. But you can hear it. There is a very strong Arabic sound to it in a way. It's closest to the Arabs in Lebanon or parts of Syria. That part of that's where it would be originating from. It's spoken by 90% of the Maltese at home. So the people that I know, they're fluent in English with a slight accent. a charming accent, maybe. So at home they really speak Maltese, and when they make a phone call, it's Maltese. But then again, you have to realize that 1/3 of the population is immigrants. So Maltese identity, it's your passport. It's your passport to have to speak that language, because that opens the door. The Maltese language is now for literature, for media, for politics, for nationhood. Nationhood as, decolonizing the Maltese mind. There is a lot of it, but also there is a very strong pride, proud to be Maltese. The language is also survival, a long foreign rule, maybe 1,000 years. As I told you, it's the only Afro-Asiatic language that is Europeanized in script and the way it's used. So they made it, they Latinized the Arabic, I would say. And it's unique because it's the only Christian god which is called Allah. So I'm not good at religion. I try to respect it as much as I can, but this is the way I think that's interesting about the island. Then in Maltese history, the language question is very dominant. For over a century, there has been a kind of battle between the languages, and Italian used to be the language of the law courts, the universities, and culture. And that was particularly after the British had beaten the French in 1800. And then slowly the Brits tried to, expand their empire. And in 1899, there was a law, the Language Substitution Decree, or not a law, but a decree. And they said, well, we have a deadline. By 1914, which is actually the start of the First World War, there was a deadline set to replace Italian with English in the law courts. So it had to be met. So if you wanted to be a lawyer or a judge, you now needed to study English. That was the cleverness of the British occupation. In 1934, the Italian was officially dropped from the official language status. So Italian was one of the official languages of the island. And that's interesting. Now, why was that at that time? Mussolini, the fascists came, they were worried. The British were really scared that with the military power that Mussolini was trying to, just like Nazi Germany, trying to expand, they were invading in Africa, in Somalia, Eritrea, those areas. There was a war with Ethiopia. So they thought, well, if there's a war with Ethiopia, there can be a war with Malta. So there was a de-Italianization British policy, a systematic campaign to get rid of the Italian on the island. People in the society then had been fighting English against Italian, and who was the winner? Actually, the Maltese language, because it also, the moment they de-Italianized and Italian was no longer an official language, then actually Maltese became an official language, and nobody cared, and nobody thought it would take over, but it did. And now it is completely, it's bilingual. Here's a pretty picture, and you can see, the sheer beauty of it. And there is so much sea because it's in the middle of the sea. It's not very big as an island, although it feels big. But there are palm trees, boats, and you see some amazing yachts of all those. Well, here they are. This is not a bad place to be. Trust me. The restaurants where you sit outside here, of course, these are all the Russian golden passport owners. But it looks amazing, and the place is there. You can sit on those tables and you have a grand view. It is really spectacular because it's coming out of the ocean in a way. Well, ocean, Mediterranean. I want to talk a bit about the demographics because it matters, particularly at this moment in Malta. We have the TCNs, the third country national, or if you like, immigrants. So this was a country where a lot of people left it because there was nothing. So from emigration, it turned into immigration. And Malta has completely transformed. There's not a bus you can take. Buses are always, bus drivers are always Nepalese. I haven't seen any non-Nepalese driving a bus. So Malta actually will have the highest immigration rate in the European Union. Why? Well, It is kind of a hospital, helping people is part of the national identity in a way, but also a lot of industry sectors, they struggle to find people that, want to work in the restaurants, want to work in the hotels, want to make up the beds. They don't want to do it. And they're a little bit spoiled as well, the children. So then they say, okay, no problem. There's plenty of people from Nigeria, Colombia, or anywhere that want to come. And that's true. 20% of Malta's workforce are third country nationals. Then there's also people that are there to just enjoy the old life, or they're working in the real estate, or they purchase houses. A lot of Brits are there and they like the life there. And they just find a simple job and they have a nice beach life, which they could do. And I know some actually. 80% of Malta's immigrants' work permits are actually non-EU. That's probably also because of the price level. Number 1 is India, number 2 is Nepal, number 3 is Philippines, number 4 is Serbia, and number 5 is Colombia. The Serbians and the Colombians you will usually see in the hotels and the restaurants. A lot, but also a lot of people from Africa. There's students from all over the world. It's very multicultural. And especially if you take public transport, usually it's the workers that you'll see. But I'm a worker too. Construction, hospitality, care, logistics, and you have also a lot of students that love the beach life. After Ibiza, Malta is party island number 2, but they cleverly made one area in near Slima where all those discotheques and nightlife thing is. If that's your thing, then it's amazing. It's not really cheap, but I guess a lot of people enjoy the life there. And sometimes you see students that were in your class and then the next time you see and they're doing an internship there because they really like it. They want to stay. Here you can see the European, this is the data I have now. It could be changing, but you can check Eurostat. But you can clearly see that Malta, Cyprus, and Luxembourg is the majority of the incoming immigration per 1,000 inhabitants. It is not the complete number because, of course, UK or Germany have huge amounts. But if we look at how much is it per 1,000, this is a very good statistic. And that is also something where we need to be a little bit on a critical tone because it is a paradise island. It can be at least, but it's built by the invisible. Malta's immigration story. People that, work a lot of hours and they're worried about the official complaint. It's not absolutely not as bad as you would see in the Gulf where it's modern slavery. That's not Malta because it's EU. But there are some interesting court cases and journalist reports on it. Nursing and care in Malta, 2/3 are third country nationals. The point is that on a single work permit, people don't really have very much of a negotiation possibility. So they earn less than Maltese. Then if you lose your job, you have the 10 days rule and you need to find a new job or you become an illegal immigrant. That is because there is an abundance of people and they like to, maintain the island a little bit, but it feels to me like very unfriendly. We see that 1/3 of the third country nationals, the immigrants, they leave after every year. So 15,000 leave, 50, 60,000 permits are being given. And I had a lot of conversations with people working and there's very strong evidence that Malta is a country of transit. It's not a final destination. So people use it to get the visa, to get the Schengen entry, and then they go to the UK or somewhere else in Europe. And a lot of them want to go to Spain. I think I want to go to Barcelona. I think I'll go to Spain. I want to go to UK. No, well, maybe Germany. I'm studying German now at the time. So it is a way to get in. And then also a way, the master plan is to also proceed. So people don't want to invest. They don't want to become part of the Maltese community. And that is, there is some strong debate on this. Political parties may use it at times during election time. But that's also, maybe also not everybody feels welcomed. I want to talk a little bit about money. It's the euro. I actually have them right here. These are the Maltese crosses I explained to you. Yeah, euro, and you'll notice that because you actually pay, yeah, a price level is pretty elevated. But it's a modern society. It's clean. It's safe. It's well organized. At times it looks a little bit British. If you look into the supermarket, you see a lot of the products, but hey, it's been British for 300 years. It makes sense. But it's also hosting at the moment a lot of people from Central and Eastern Europe because they love the sun, and the Baltic states you see a lot. So a lot of people from Poland also. So it's very popular there, despite the price level. They didn't always have the euro. And in the past, this was the British rule, the government of Malta, when they still had shillings, but then it became a little bit more metric. And here we see the Hami Lira, and they had the Lira, and here you see the Maltese money, but not as strong as the euro. And I think they really went up, and that has been a good thing for them. If we look at the economics, it is about money, right? Fastest GDP growth in Europe. It's 4 times the average Eurozone. This is a place where actually a lot of money is being made. If we look at financial services, 10% growth year on year. A lot of banks in Malta, and that is because of the favorable ways. So this is a perfect island, not so much to money laundry, because they're a little bit being checked now, but there must be ways. Tourism boom is enormous, 70% growth, almost on a yearly basis. Restaurant, hotels, they pop up. But the Maltese that I know can also complain about the concrete jungle that you see around the coast. And there's hardly any place which is not full of ugly buildings owned by, people that speak with a strong Cockney accent. So that is a reality. We also see a growth of luxury places where now they try to market it to the people from the Gulf, the Arab people that want to have, a nice retreat. And you see that some hotels also offer the fasting services for people that the Ramadan and those times. We see that also Chinese are starting to get interest in Malta, but that also has to deal with the possibilities to enter the European Union. Ultra low unemployment. And as a result, we see a lot of people, but there's also a very strong skill shortage. We see that the people that come in, they somehow need to be trained, but then you also have a service level shortage. So it's all left to the employers to take care of that. So the government makes contracts with on governmental level that they supply so many work permits for Nepal, for instance, and then they need to upskill them. But some of the bus drivers are wild. It is a very good European location, and we see that fintech, crypto, that is completely established, and on a governmental level, they really understood that. At the moment, the big plan is the AI strategy, and they want to roll it out. They're making the blueprints at the moment how the island where the business is, because Gozo is very quiet and lovely. We see that all this growth is also really not good for sustainability goals. On the contrary, the island is ugly concrete all over now. But yeah, that is the price you pay, I suppose. Let's talk a little bit about the blockchain island, as it's been dubbed. They organized the law system, the regulatory sandbox, and the global crypto hub. This is really what it is. It was the first country in the world to regulate DLT products and services, so digital assets, crypto-friendly laws, an open-minded government, open to tomorrow's world, a hotbed for blockchain companies. And this is really nice for them. And it's also easy to find people because, you have a beach life at the same time. There's a lot of nice, attractive places. And when you ask your partner, well, is it okay if we're going to live in Malta? A lot of people will say, oh, Malta, because there is nice things and a nice Max Mara shop and everything's there. So attracted global giants as Binance. They're positioned now in Malta. And within Europe, Malta clearly has the first mover advantage because the Blockchain Act, the law from 2018, that's a long time ago. So they give these fintech innovating companies access to the EU market, and it doesn't matter because it's digital. You can service anywhere, and we see that that is very, very active. Then I often see a lot of these kind of iGaming Malta. Dutch customer experience agent, French CRM manager, Finnish SEO manager. You see Estonian iGaming customer service specialist, Malta, looking for a job abroad, work in Malta with iGaming. Clients, we're looking for candidates who speak Norwegian, German, Finnish, Danish, everything in the north where the euro can be spent, or the kroner, to actually, spend and lose your money for these Maltese companies. And they are doing very, very well. And why are they doing well? Well, Europe's iGaming sandbox. First EU state with full online gambling framework. iGaming Hub is good for 12% of Malta's income, which is almost the same as the tourism. The tourism is very visible with all the tourist attraction and the things around the beaches, but the games are it's there. And they bring in a lot of quality, spending power, good restaurants, it's all there. There's 20,000 jobs in the ecosystem on iGaming. And that's why it's becoming really multicultural, but then it's very fast people that live on their phone. There's global reach, and that's the internet nowadays. So there's 450 remote gaming licenses. The government is really supporting it. And it's powering Malta's economy with 1 billion euros a year. That is a lot. The laws are very clear, and the EU market is there. So just like with the crypto and the blockchain, also in the gaming sector, it's the first mover advantage. And it's also really a lab for gaming innovation. A lot is taking place there. Family member of mine is very rich with game platforms, and he bought a bank in Malta because he needs it. He needs to have access directly to money there with one phone call. And so it's both. Gaming and banking is both there. Is not what you expect, but it is what it is. This is the world of today. And also tomorrow. But let's look at yesterday. The Second World War has been very savage for the beautiful island of Malta. And the city of Valletta, it's suffered more bombs than London did during the Second World War, with the Luftwaffe, with the bombing of London City. That was very, very strict, very, very, very heavy. But Malta had more, and there's not a street where you cannot see but they rebuilt everything in a semi-authentic way, but it lacks the historical beauty, and that's what makes it sad. Italians and the Germans, they bombed like crazy. Now, as part of that, and part of the defense done by the British at the time, they didn't have radar, and they wanted to make sure that the airplanes, they could actually have their guns prepared and ready to shoot them down. So what they had in the 30s was a new technology to hear everything far away, and they made an enormous wall. And then if you would stand at the right position, you could hear enormously much. You could hear kilometers away, and they would have this acoustic mirror. They would call it the listening ear, and that is what the British thought would be a weapon against airstrikes. So they tested one in the UK, and then they said, okay, let's do it in Malta. And then they also wanted to do it in Gibraltar and Singapore. But actually it didn't work because anything, a goat would be like enormous noise. It was supposed to be to listen if they could hear. Of course, they could hear if the airplanes were coming, but they would also, have pain in their ears because of the goats that would think. And then in 1937, radar was invented, so they didn't need it anymore. But here you can still see one of the 2 listening ears in the world. And this is what it is. And here you see a car. And the idea was that you would stand at the very end, and then all that sound would mirror to your ear. And if you were standing on this space, then you could actually see it. So this is one of the 2 left in this world. That's what they thought was modern in 1934. The other crazy story is Mosta. Mosta is a beautiful little town. I sometimes take it when I'm staying somewhere else and then the bus is driving through. And I remember it because when you drive, it looks majestic, like the Vatican in Rome. It's huge. It's very beautiful at the same time. It's monumental. And there is a dome. The Mosta Dome is a very large church. On April 9 in 1942, there are hundreds of people going to the Mass to pray. But a German plane comes with a 500-kilogram bomb. And when all these people are there and the priest starts to, the bomb crashes through the roof and it falls on the floor, and everybody is praying and thinks, okay, we're going to die. And by miracle, the bomb doesn't explode. Here is a picture of the bomb. This is huge. It's 500 kilogram. This is going to destroy the whole town, probably, not just the dome church. And this is called the miracle, the Mosta Dome miracle of 1942. So there's just a small hole in the roof, and that's it. And they say, well, God protected us. And it's seen as divine protection miracle. And actually, they still celebrate it. But in the bomb, you can see there is a marble plate, and then you see a replica of the bomb, which they dismantled, but scary business. Good. Malta is also in the news at times, and it's not always the good news if we're honest about it. What about this? Well, let's take a look. Malta is right there, and that's Luxembourg. We can see Transparency International, Berlin-based international global NGO. And what does it do? It has local chapters, and they say, well, this is a survey. It's what we do at CCBS. But then they measure corruption. And they ask a lot of people, and this way they categorize it. And there's a score. There's a yearly hit parade. This is what EU is, and where is Malta? Well, Malta is right next to Bulgaria, Romania, and Hungary. And as you know from the headlines, it's not always that positive. So is it corrupt? I don't want to be rude to my hosts, but there is a low score. That is the reality of things. Not in daily life. You can't pay off the police officer. That would be not clever. But at the higher ranks, well, you may have seen some news about it. And one would be my golden passport. This has been a scandal, a big scandal. And that is called Malta's investment citizenship. So if you invest money, you can get yourself a golden passport. Malta's golden passport scheme was a cash machine of 1.5 billion euros a year. That's what the government would take. They said, yeah, it's good for the people. That is actually really not true. Only 8% made it to social spending. So that is a big lie. So where did it stay? All this money that moved, and maybe that is part of that corruption score. I'm not informed well, but there are plenty of things online that you can see. So if you wanted to have an EU passport, you had to pay 1.5 million per person, and it would be 750,000 as investment, as cash, and you needed to buy something of 750k. But Malta is not that cheap in real estate. So you didn't need to live there also. So we see that a lot of Russians and Chinese actually bought that. And it's a perfect way to circumvent the sanctions that have been made. You just buy a passport and then you can travel wherever you want. 30,000 passports have been sold, and they give you complete access to 27 EU nations. It's only recently that the European Court of Justice has said that communalization of citizenship is against the EU law and it therefore is illegal. Now, Malta wasn't the only one in the bad group. There was also Cyprus, Bulgaria, Ireland, and Portugal, and even Spain to some extent, where you could get citizenship if you would invest in property. So if you buy expensive villas, then that would give you a passport. I'm very glad that this is stopped now, because we see that most people that actually got these passports are labeled by researchers as real criminals that are able to even launder money this way and escape justice because by just buying a passport. Scary, no? And it's happening right in our back garden. That was one, the passport. The Maltese government claims that these passports are still keep the validity, because otherwise they have to pay back the money, and they don't want to. Where did it go anyway? Then a little bit about Maltese Dutch connections. We have again this guy. He's always everywhere. He has his own political party, or well, it's going to be diminished in the elections, of course. But he was the Council of Europe rapporteur, and he was seeking into the murder case. There was a journalist, probably who investigated all these corruption schemes, and Caruana Galizia, and she was actually bombed. A mother of 2 children who had to lose her life because she was the Panama Papers by herself, and then they tried to have Pieter Omtzigt Wikipedia page. They changed it and manipulated it, and so there's a lot of activities. But there's also people who feels that his toughness also helped in cleaning it up a little bit. He's not the only Dutchman that went to the island. Also, Maurits Esse did, although not very long. He was from a ship, but there is people that believe that a lot of these staircases might have also found inspiration in Valletta. This is called the balcony. It is really beautiful to see it, even nowadays. There's also photographs. There's a little bit more ugly buildings now and not the old ones, but luckily there's also the version in Lego. That's not the only Dutchman. There's another one that likes to be active on the small island, the microstate in south of Europe. And it's Mr. Schroevers, and here he's being interviewed by Malta CEOs. That is the magazine to be in for anything in leadership. And what I'm so proud of is that actually they mention the research. That is not something that I said, it's something that they discovered, the journalist. So yeah, it's amazing. And you can see that this is the top magazine, and there's a lot of rich industrials and a lot of banks and stuff I just told you, and they're actually reading about our research, and that made me really proud, a proud part-time Maltese. What else do? We also work with the Malta Leadership Institute. I really enjoy their excellent spring or autumn schools, and then you get to see the beautiful balconies on the city. It is a 1-week balcony where you can experience the vibe of the island and some other things. And we have some teachers at times who enjoy the learning, enjoy the surrounding of the place, where with my Flemish Belgian colleague I can have a delicious dinner at night. We also, this is what it looks like. It's amazing, no? There is a giant statue of Queen Victoria, strategically positioned where a lot of the country's administrators are working. Here's a little video. There's the Malta Spring School, or perhaps Autumn School, and there we see that there is people coming from diverse backgrounds in Europe together. There's people also from Africa, from South Asia, and that mixes for 1 week. You can talk about cross-cultural, but you can also do it. Now, Spring School is one of those activities where you actually get to visit the Blue Lagoon. There's a lot of work in the classroom, but 1/3 is social program, which is so amazing. And 1/3 is where you actually have to interview Maltese leaders and people in companies, and you interview them. So you get to see the island with a mixed team. There's mandatory mixed teams. So you're with a Spaniard, you're with a Pole, a Lithuanian, a Serbian, somebody from India and Ghana, and that all mixes. It's very good. And then there's also the boat at the end, when the certificates have been, the certificates. And the credits, by the way, the European credits, when they have been exchanged, and there is the ceremony with the cakes, then you go into a bus, you go to the north of the island, which is a trip of an hour at least, and then there's a boat, and this boat is the party boat, and you go to the Blue Lagoon, which is dreadfully cold water. It's a very over-romanticized classic blockbuster from when yours truly was a young man, and that's partly shot there, also in Turkey, I believe, and in some islands, but also partly there. And it's amazing, and so you can swim in the cold water. I will not show this picture too long. Then there's also a lot of food and booze on I've never seen so much drinking stuff on a boat, but it's fun. There's loud music, and they're playing all the songs of all the nationalities. So one moment everybody's yelling to some Indian or Lithuanian or Polish song, and it's fun. And this is a typical dish that I absolutely love, the pastizi. God, they're good, and they're filled with a kind of peas, the erte, or with a kind of ricotta cheese, and there's also some sweet ones. But it's the best of the. This is better than croissant. It's so crunchy and it's perfect and so healthy. There's also Maltese music. Now we also already listened to Edion, but there's a really alive. There's a jazz scene, there is a pop scene, there's people that really, enjoy making music, and there is that Mediterranean vibe to it. They really have musicians that take music serious, and I didn't expect it for such a small community, but it is. And just click on YouTube and services that offer music to you, but you'll find there is decent music. Is there also some things we can watch? Yes, there is. There is a couple of movies that are actually made in Malta, although you would never think it. Midnight Express is not shot in Turkey, it's shot in Malta. The Count of Monte Cristo is in Malta. Troy was in Malta. Game of Thrones, or big parts of it, is in Malta. Gladiator 2 is in Malta. Jurassic World 3, and even Popeye. It was, I don't know if you know Robin Williams, he was a comedian, stand-up improvisation genius, probably. His very first movie, which didn't really make it, was Popeye the Sailor Man. And they built, Robert Altman, they built an entire village, and it's still there. And it's called Popeye Village. It's not far away from the 5-star hotels on the west side of the island, a bit north. And this is it. And this is Popeye Village. Should you go there? I've been trying to. I've never made it that far, but I'll try sometimes to shoot a nice motivational midterm final exam video or so. What other movies? Is there anything Maltese? Yes, there is. There is Luzu, and that is these amazing little boats. Now, these boats are typical for the island, because it was an island, and the fishermen would go out, and a lot of the dishes are also with fish, of course, and they always have the evil eye on front of the boat. And this is for me very typical there, and you still see them. And it is a nice movie. It's in Maltese. I only had it without subtitles, but I enjoyed it with a good glass of something. So they have also a movie. This is shot by yours truly. at Marsaglok. Marsaglok is at the south end of the island, where you have a boardwalk, and then there's a road, but there's also terraces on the waterfront and also inside. A lot of good restaurants, and food can be really nice in Malta. It's not cheap, but yeah, it's the quality of life in that sense is pretty okay. Service is amazing. Hardly any Maltese, maybe the owner, but the entire staff is a mixture of the world. But that is part of nowadays Malta. It's super multicultural. And I like that. That's what I teach. That's what I also really enjoy. Now, Marsaglok is attractive. Some funny shots. Can you swim? Oh, you should. It's amazing water, especially after the summer. It's in the spring, it's maybe still a bit cold water, but after summer, it's amazing. And here, look at this. It's so blue. That's why it's called Blue Lagoon. And we see one of those classic luzus again. But it's enjoyable. A lot of rocks, though, I should say. It's not always sandy beaches, but they have some amazing sand beaches, like Golden Sands in the west part, and on the of course. But usually there is, next to the sea, there is a swimming pool. That's usually the way they solve it. In the old maps, you always see these like monsters and dragons and terrible fish and sea dragons. And there's the fishermen talk about, strong stories. Huge sharks. Don't worry, there is not at all, except in 1987. And then again in 1997, there was a great white shark, 7 meters, 300,000 kilograms, and this was a Marsaglok, which I just showed you. And again, it was later, and here are the 2 fish that were caught, and this is actually there. This is amazing. And here you see the little Luzu boat and this monster of 7 meters. But is there any sharks around it? No, don't worry. That is not an issue. You can swim and you can go out with the kayak into the ocean and the boat trips when the wind is not too strong. If the wind is too strong, there is no ships. There's nothing, and you really shouldn't. But so at the morning we have to see, okay, what's it going to be in the afternoon? Okay, yes, we go. So it's a bit like that. If it's crazy weather, you can always just enjoy the caves, the going down. And this is my dear friend Jasmine, principal of MLI. And you can walk down all the way, and there's just these rocks, and you dive in, and it's amazing. I still regret not diving in there. But this is another one. This is the Dragonara cave, which probably imploded. So it was a cave directly next to the sea, and you can actually dive there. And this is an amazing picture. I think it's wow that you can actually do that. It's 6.5 meters deep, so be a little bit careful that you don't go all the way to the bottom. Oh. This is just on the sea. This is not the Dragonara cave, but it's still amazing, no? And it's so green and blue, the water. A bit noisy though. You can see also people walking under there, and you got these majestic cave structures that you think, wow, I'm in a movie set. Well, yeah, there are movies being shot there a lot, like I told you. This is on Gozo, and you walk through, and then you actually really need to go down for 100 meters from the mountainous area with rocks and stuff and cactuses. But then you come to a kind of orange sand beach, one of the nicest I saw in my life. And look at the blue turquoise color of the water. It's very spectacular, and there's nice food, Pastizi. So this, my friend, is the island that I'm trying to sell to you today. I hope that my story was enough to make you consider to buy some of these direct flights from wherever you want to go. There is a lot. It's a tiny airport, but it's functional, it's nice, and it's well connected. I hope I was able to also, lay the puzzle a bit of some of the pieces, that you have some idea of what Maltese identity would be about, that you understand the possibilities that within the European inner market are existing, and definitely Malta is taking its share. And you saw there is much more to Malta than you ever might have imagined. I hope that you may savor Malta's sensational panorama, the vistas with the sea, its beautiful ancient culture. If it's for you, it's nightlife, it's delicate food. There are Maltese wines. Release the mighty Maltese in you, my friends. Go and conquer. You have a passport. Use that little booklet. Don't stay on your phone. It's boring there. So get that suitcase loaded and that was actually the Maltese fireworks. That's very old and a very traditional factories they have, and we tend to import the stuff from China for already 1 or 2 centuries. But in Malta, there's also own production, and a lot of the famous fireworks that we see was usually Maltese craftsmen that made it. So it's family tradition, and they have all these beautiful, complete sculptures out in the water, and there is the fireworks, and then the rich people have reserved spots at the castles. But I showed you the places at the beginning, but it's really like with all these walls and these buildings, and you have an immense vista on the harbors, and it's a very spectacular place, and it's worth your euros. And I would love to invite you. Maybe you can join at the MLI Spring School or Autumn School for that matter. And I want to say to you, grazie. I hope you enjoyed the Republic of Malta, EU member state, and I hope that one day Malta may receive you. Grazie. Bye bye.
Dankjewel, Sander.
Doei doei. Bye bye. Ciao ciao. Tschüssi. Adios.